Morning everyone. Morning po.
Morning po, sir.
Po, Doc.
Morning po. Okay. Good morning po. Okay. Good morning po sa ating lahat. Good morning, Sir Rafael, Sir John Eric, Sir Joel, and Ma'am Bell. So, mukhang nasa biyahe ata si Sir Joel. By the way, congratulations again, Sir Joel.
Thank you po, sir. Opo.
Congratulations and good luck.
Salamat po sa support.
Okay. So, I hope kahit nasa biyahe si Sir Joel, will be able to discuss yung ating topic for today. So we'll just go straight to our topic, which is on the allelochemical. Then later, after my discussion, I'll give the microphone, the spotlight to Sir Rafael to discuss yung sa kanyang presentation naman on allelochemical relations. Okay. So for the past reports natin, for the past discussion, we've been talking about different abiotic factors and how they are related to how they interact with the plants and how the plants respond to these biotic factors. This time, we'll be talking about interaction between two plant species or more. So let me just pull out my screen. Okay. So I hope it's clear. Yeah. Okay. So this is our topic for today. So we'll be talking about allelochemical relations with the following subtopics. So the competition among plants, the competition within plant populations, what is allelopathy, the chemical interactions among plants, and the allelopathy applications in agriculture. So basically, this is another technical topic kasi more on we'll be talking about different uh, different chemical compounds. Okay. So when we are talking about competition, we are talking about the interaction between two species. Now for the animals, madali siyang makita kasi it's very evident. Kumbaga, we can see them that competing together, we can see their interaction. So, but for the plants, hindi yun masyadong visible. It's not that as visible as the animals. But still, in any form of life, sabi nga dito, life competes for life. So, in any form of life, it competes para for better survival, for realizing potential growth, and for their sustainable existence. So hindi at kasama din yon yung Kingdom Plantae, which includes the plants. So according to this presentation, every plant is a competitor. So the overall purpose of competition therefore appears to be life enhancing. So ito ang main goal. However, that is not true to all. So sometimes competition, it will always have a negative effect to the other species. So but in reality, overall, ang gusto natin that the competition should be to be able to enhance life for survival, for growth. So competition, by definition, that is the interaction between individuals and populations that is somehow negative for both. That is according to Weiner. Now, interaction between two or intra-species leading to a negative impact on each other might be physical also. Now, some plants, they release chemicals into the environment that suppresses the growth and survival of other plants, and this is the process known as allelopathy. Now, yung interaction ng mga plants, they are called actually neighboring effects. So when a plant interacts with another plant, neighboring plant in particular, this interaction is actually called neighboring effect. Now, there are various effects. So meron siyang negative, meron siyang positive. But for the negative, eto sila. So when there is a neighboring effect, when a plant interact with another plant, there might be the following. So shortage of vital resources. So for example, light, water, and mineral nutrients. There's also might be a decreased environmental capacity needed for triggering the process of breaking down seed dormancy. It may also induce or increase in vulnerability to lodging, vulnerability to pest epidemics and hazards. Then there's also a decline availability of pollinators, and yung last is release of deleterious chemicals. But on the other hand, meron din ding positive, yung pagkakaroon ng neighboring effect. So, a decrease in overabundant resources that could affect normal growth rate of the plants. In particular, ito yung mga invasive species. Protection against pest epidemics, lodging, and grazing, because this is how plants respond to the competition. Then next is increased availability of some essential nutrients such as nitrogen in the presence of nitrogen fixers as symbionts with neighboring plants. Now, when there is interference of plant with the other, dalawang bagay yan. It may either fail to germinate despite retaining its viability, or it may also die, or it may also survive. So it's either positive or negative lang yan. But among the plants, it is usually best understood by looking into the density yield relations. So the density of the plant over the production or the yield relations. Sorry. Now, among the plants, we have what we call the asymmetric competition. So these are the two aspects of individual competing plants. So ang ginagawa, it's either they divide or they consume the limiting resources. Anong nangyayari dito? When the larger competing individuals will divide up and consume larger chunks of the limiting resources, it will suppress the normal growth and yield of the smaller competing individuals. Just like the human beings, kapag mas malaki ang tao, mas malaki ang nakokonsume. So this is also similar with plants. So when there is large competing individuals in a certain area, it will consume most of the limiting resources. Thereby, yung mga smaller plants, yung mga smaller competing individuals na kasama doon, it will also be their growth will be suppressed as well as their yield. So this is what we call the asymmetric competition. So in asymmetric competition, it tells us that it actually denotes a competing situation in which larger individuals have disproportionate effect or obtain a disproportionate share of natural resources. Meaning, the larger the individuals, they tend to monopolize the limiting resources, thereby limiting the other species. So this is usually happening in areas kapag meron tayong malalaking halaman competing with the crops. But on the other hand, in terms of interspecific competition among plants, meron din tayong tinatawag na mixed species cultures. So ito yung we tend to diversify. If you are talking about farms, we diversify the crops in the plants in that area. So in many cases, when we are talking about mixed species cultures, it's more complex. So comparing it with monoculture na isa lang yung tinatanim, mas maganda ang yield pagdating sa mga mixed species cultures or mixed species areas, or when you diversify the crops. Now, this is because of what we call complementation or complementarity. So what is this? This is a phenomenon in which two plant species positively influence the growth of each other, which might be due to the differential resource utilization by different species. So this is happening when these two species, kahit magkasama sila doon sa isang lugar or doon sa isang area, they do not compete, rather they complement each other, probably because the resources that they need differs. So kumbaga kung isang halaman mas gusto niya si nitrogen, so nitrogen yung sa kanya. Then kung isang halaman naman it requires more of phosphorus, so phosphorus naman yung sa kanya. So that is the good thing about having mixed species. This is also the primary reason why monoculture is not actually advised. Now, further, pag sinabi natin complementation, it always depends on the nature of resource utilization, as I've discussed a while ago. So if the resource requirements of the two species differ, they will be able to utilize more of the resources available to them if they were raised together than if each of the species were grown in a monoculture. So complementation. This is commonly this is what we call complementation. Now, on the contrary, ito yung nabanggit natin kanina na allelopathy, in which this is a biological phenomenon in which some plants produce specific biochemicals that exert an influence on germination, growth, nutrient uptake, survival, symbiotic relationship, reproduction, and yield of other plants or microorganisms. So also the soil, particularly in the soil. So these biochemicals are actually called allelochemicals. Now the allelochemicals, they are released by one organism. It may be beneficial or detrimental for the other organism or for the whole community. But again, not all species are allelopathic in nature. So, meron tayong, in allelopathy, the usual, when we hear allelopathy, ang lagi nating naisip is, there is an inhibition. So, there is a chemical inhibition or amelioration of species by another. In allelopathy, the allelochemicals can be released from any part of the plant that includes the roots, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, and are also present in surrounding environment, particularly sa soil. Now again, not all species are allelopathic in nature. There are some species that actually release chemicals which are beneficial rather than detrimental. So these beneficials, we know they are commonly known as growth promoting chemicals. So by this, we can refer that there are two types of allelopathy. It may be positive or it may be negative. So when one chemical induces a beneficial effect to the other, that is what we call positive allelopathy. And when one is detrimental to the other plant or to the other species, that is what we call negative allelopathy. Now, all of this, yung lahat ng to, yung allelochemicals na nire-release ng mga plants, they are always dependent on the abiotic factors. So, it may be induced by temperature, it may be induced by pH. At the same time, yung mga biotic factors in the area will also affect the production of these allelochemicals. Now, commonly, kapag yung leaf na hulog, so the allelochemicals can get released into the soil environment and reveal their effect on the plants. So particularly for those plants that release their chemicals through their leaves. So these are the various types of allelochemicals na present sa ating mga halamans in different crops. You have the anthracenones, ferulic acid, cinnamic acid, sorgoleon, mamalactone, caffeic acid, gallic acid, benzoic acid, janglone. So these are some of the allelochemicals present in the plants. So let's proceed with the chemistry of this allelopathy. So allelopathic plants, they release harmful chemicals from their roots or other parts of the plants which target actually other neighboring plants. So anong nangyari? These are just some of the examples. Some of the allelochemicals reduce chlorophyll contents in a plant and consequently slow down or stop photosynthesis of the target plant, eventually resulting in suppressed growth or death of the plant. Some of the allelopathic plants release allelochemicals in gaseous form, and these allelochemicals are released from the small leaf pores. Now, these allelochemical gases, they target the neighboring plants and suppress their growth, or worse, they kill them. Now, allelopathic plants, on the other hand, sa ibang cases, they shed their leaves containing allelochemicals during fall season for those living in the temperate regions. The leaves then decompose and release these noxious chemicals which suppress the growth of their target plants. So this is the usually the how these plants interact chemically with other plants. Now, but commonly, ang nagiging epekto natin pagdating sa allelopathy, they reduce the seed germination or the seedling growth. Now, this is very much important in agriculture because if if two species, two crops, do not complement to each other, it will affect the yield ng both plants. Now, the nature of allelochemicals is distinguishable from the synthetic herbicides. How they are differentiated. Ang allelochemicals, they do not have common physiological target or common mode of action. In contrary, yung ating mga synthetic herbicides, they have a common physiological target or mode of action. There's always that specific mechanism on how they kill or they interact with other species. Now, the ecological consequences of allelopathy, it underlines the specific nature of specific plant species, governing ecological processes, influencing changes in ecosystem structure and functioning. Allelochemicals, they are important in the long run in terms of talking about evolution of natural ecosystems. Later on, I will show a diagram regarding this. But generally, these chemicals, they are important in terms of influencing and determining the ecological processes, specifically plant diversity, nutrient dynamics, soil fertility, microbial populations, and succession. So this is allelopathy. Has though paano ba? Though allelochemicals, they tend to decrease or they tend to inhibit. Again, not all chemicals are detrimental. So these are just some of the allelopathic plants. So we have mango. They inhibit sprouting of purple nutsedge tubers. Sunflower. The cover crop residue reduces weed menace in fava bean crop. For the thickwood, the leaf extracts inhibit jungle rice and sedge. For wheat, weed suppression when cultivated as cover crop or residues retained as mulch in the field. So these are the some of the plants natin na encounter. Or these are just some of the plants and they impact other plants or they have this what we call the target species. Now, there are various allelopathic mechanisms. So you can see in here in the sidebar, have it has an effect on soil ecology, has an effect on photosynthesis, respiration, enzyme functions, influence on plant growth regulator system. It has an effect on antioxidant system, effect on protein and nucleic acid synthesis, effect on water and nutrient uptake, and effect on cell division and elongation. So it has these mechanisms or it has specific these mechanisms, yung mismong allelopathy it has various effects in terms of this, what I've mentioned a while ago. So let's first start with the effect on soil ecology. Now, there is a negative feedback of soil sickness and plant growth as a result of the behavior of microorganisms influenced by specific allelochemicals. So as I've mentioned kanina, there are some specific allelochemicals na not just only the plants, but also the microorganisms in that area are affected. Now, when these microorganisms are influenced, it has somehow an interaction with the soil, with the plants. So there is a negative feedback. In this case, there is a negative feedback of soil sickness and plant growth. Now, there are also several microorganisms inhabiting the rhizosphere that generate positive feedback, favoring plants' allelopathic potentials. So there are also some, so positive, negative. And there are also some bacteria that can change the very nature of an allelochemical. Example, they activate the non-toxic allelochemical and thus increasing its inhibition potential. There are also some bacteria that they can transform a toxic allelochemical into a non-toxic one and thus can avert or minimize yung effect nito of some weeds and targeted plants of economic importance. But whether the soil microorganisms can transform the nature of allelochemicals, it may be non-toxic to toxic and vice versa. Yung allelopathy, it's very vital in altering soil ecology and consequent plant-to-plant interaction. Then eventually, it may alter the vegetation composition in an ecosystem. So that's how large or that's how great allelopathy uh, impacts yung ating ecosystem. So it's just only the plant, but later on, in the long term, sabi nga kanina, it's a long-term consequence that it may impact the whole composition of an ecosystem. Now, this is, okay. So this is an image that shows yung interaction ng allelochemicals that released by a certain plant, this allelopathic plant, and it may be it interacts with soil microorganisms. Now, it may now lead to various effects to the plants. It may be negative allelopathy that suppresses the growth of a plant, or it may be a positive effect, positive allelopathic effect that ameliorates the growth of the plant. So this is what is allelopathy in image depicts. Next. So, okay. So this time let's talk about photosynthesis. So the effect of allelopathy and photosynthesis, it goes beyond with the process. So allelochemicals released by some plants affect the photosynthesis by other plants in three ways. So one is they inhibit photosynthetic machinery. Second, they damage the photosynthetic machinery. And third, they decompose the photosynthetic pigments, which are all essential in terms of the continuous process of photosynthesis. So kapag nasira yung ating mga machineries, or kasi for the plants itself, yung mga leaves natin, yung photosynthetic machinery natin, it will actually inhibit the whole photosynthesis. Now, a considerable decrease in the photosynthetic pigments affects photosynthesis by one, blocking energy and electron transfer. Second, decrease enzyme action in ATP or adenosine triphosphate synthesis, inhibiting ATP synthesis, affecting stomatal conductance and transpiration, or yung water uplift. And lastly, yung inhibit the overall photosynthetic process. So, chemically, this is how allelochemicals affect yung photosynthesis ng mga halaman. Okay. If it affects the photosynthesis, also affects respiration. So the allelochemical impact on respiration contributes to curbing plant growth. So allelopathic plants influence respiration at the physiological and biological levels. So the various respiration stages that allelochemicals can influence are the following: yung electron transfer in the mitochondria, the oxidative phosphorylation, the ATP enzyme activity, and the carbon dioxide production. Now, once oxygen intake is reduced, this triggers the mechanism leading to respiration inhibition involving prevention of NADH oxidation, inhibition of ATP synthesis, decline of ATP production in mitochondria, disturbance in plant oxidative phosphorylation, and eventually respiration inhibition. So this is basically yung production. So as we all know, ATP, that is the energy of a certain species. Now, if a plant is inhibited, yung oxygen intake is reduced, it will now trigger because of the allelochemicals, it will trigger inhibition of several processes doon sa buong respiration process. Now, there are also some chemicals, in contrary, that can also accelerate respiration by stimulating release of carbon dioxide. So depending on the plants that interact with each other. Next, effect on enzyme functions. So enzymes, as we all know, they are important because they are the catalyst of certain processes. Now, there are various allelochemicals that influence the synthesis, the functions and activities and contents of various enzymes engaged in various biochemical and physiological mechanisms. An example, the caffeic acid, the catechol, the chlorogenic acid, they inhibits the main enzyme, phosphorylase, which participates in the process of seed germination. Another example, the tannic acid, it inhibits peroxidase, catalase, and cellulase enzymes. Now, synthesis of amylase and acid phosphatase in the endosperm is also suppressed by tannic acid. Now, this tannic acid, I know we are familiar with the term phytochemicals. So these are some of the allelochemicals classified under phytochemicals. So that's how ganun ka impluensya yung other allelochemicals, because if an enzyme, they are catalyst. They catalyze a certain they catalyze a certain protein na and it will trigger the process of the needed process. So just in case in here, if the enzyme phosphorylase is inhibited by this allelochemicals, hindi magkakaroon ng seed germination. So that's how it affects, allelochemicals affects the enzymes. Next, the allelochemicals, they also have an influence on the plant growth regulator system. So allelochemicals can strike an imbalance among various phytohormones, which are responsible for plant growth or can adversely affect the plant growth regulator system. So leading inhibition in seed germination and overall growth and development of the targeted plants. There are also most of the phenolic compounds, which are allelochemicals in nature. They stimulate the activity of indole-3 acetic acid oxidase and inhibit APOD reaction with IA-bound gibberellic acid to affect endogenous hormone production. So this time, it affects some of the hormones. And if there is an imbalance in hormones, it may affect doon sa growth ng isang plant. Next, effect on antioxidant system. So there are allelochemicals that cause victim plants to produce reactive oxygen species, or ROS, can induce an alteration in the activity of antioxidant enzymes, so such as peroxidase, ascorbic acid peroxidase, and superoxide dismutase to resist oxidative stress. So for instance, activities of these antioxidant enzymes are altered by caffeic acid during the processes of root development, and it will reduce hypocotyls phenolics in Phaseolus aureus, this one species. So this is this time antioxidant enzymes, antioxidant system naman yung tinitira ng mga allelochemicals. Now, next, it has an effect on the protein and nucleic acid synthesis. This time we are talking about the DNA, the RNA of a certain species. Now, allelochemicals, they released by some of the plants. They target DNA, RNA, protein synthesis, and interfere with the metabolism of these biomolecules. A few allelochemicals, particularly alkaloids, they induce inhibition in DNA polymerase 1 and thwart DNA transcription and translation. I'll just share something about this. Alkaloids in particular, because I had my master's. My master's thesis is on the angiogenesis, talking about the inhibition of the production of blood vessels. So I used a certain plant, particularly mga teas, yung mga tea natin. I used the indigenous one, Chaang Gubat, and it has these alkaloids that inhibits yung angiogenesis. Anong importansya? What I'm mentioning this, ang importansya ng inhibition ng angiogenesis is that it's very much related to cancer. So if angiogenesis is inhibited, ang nangyayari, yung metastasis, wherein if there is a transfer of, yung nagta-transfer yung mga cancer cells to a different organ, it prevents that process because yung blood vessels ay putol. But of course, kapag sobra-sobra yung inhibition, it will affect yung namang blood flow. So that is very evident in that case. So allelochemicals, they even target at the DNA level. So it's not just only physical. That's just only stunt the growth of some species, but it actually affects at the DNA level. So it induces several inhibition in the process. So there are also some allelochemicals that bring an increase in the temperature of DNA cleavage. There are also some of those that inhibit protein synthesis in various ways by inhibiting amino acid absorption and transport. Now, inhibition of protein species, it will result to the decreased growth rates of the plants or the crops. Now, many alkaloids and phenols, ferulic acid and cinnamic acid, they are actually involved in inhibiting protein synthesis. That's why doon sa example ko kanina in terms of angiogenesis, yung protein na bumubuo doon sa mga blood vessels, they are inhibited because of these examples, the alkaloids, the phenols, ferulic acid, and cinnamic acid. Now, all the phenolic acids, they play role of allelochemicals interfere with the integrity of the DNA and RNA. At kapag DNA and RNA yung affected, several processes, particularly protein synthesis, is also affected. Next, effect on water and nutrient uptake. So a number of allelopathic plants inhibit water utilization by the plants they target and thus push them into a state of water stress. So these plants also adversely affect uptake of nutrients by their victim species. In particular, they inhibit sodium, potassium ATPase, responsible for the absorption and transport of ions at the cell plasma membrane, which has a role many allelopathic plants play against their target species. So of course, if these are suppressed, nagkakaroon tayo ng problem with cellular absorption. So these are some of the allelochemicals, some of the allelopathic plant and their targeted plant species. At ano yung mga mineral nutrients affected? So example, we have the ferulic acid, example of the allelopathic plants. We have rice, oats, seeds of apples and oranges. Affected are the quartz seedlings. It affects actually ammonia and nitrate. Ferulic acid, there are some minerals affected. Let's say here, cinnamic acid. Example coming from the cucumber root exudates. So target nito ay cucumber. Ang affected na mineral, we have the dehydrogenase, ATPase, nitrate, and reductase. Another, let's have this one, sorgolion. So sorghum root oxidates. Affected naman ito, we have the peas, soybeans, and corn. Ang nangyayari, we have water solute uptake, affected the hydrogen ATPase, proton function across root cell plasmalemma. So we have also here the fumaric acid coming from peanuts, tomato, carrot, basil, garlic, wine, and vinegar. Affected naman yung mga maize seedlings. So ang nangyayari dito, there's a net nitrate uptake, plasma membrane, and HTPase activity. So we have several references about this. These are just some of the allelochemicals and some of the plants, mga target plant species nila, and what are the mineral nutrient affected. So this basically affects the plant nutrition in general. So lastly, there are also effect on cell division and elongation. So some allelopathic plants, they release monoterpenoids that carry allelochemical properties that directly hitting cell division and DNA synthesis in plant meristems. So the 5 well-known monoterpenoids with potential allelopathic effects leading to impairment of cell division and DNA synthesis processes are the following. So we have 1,8-cenol, alpha-pinene, beta-pinene, CAM4, and CAMFIN. But not only does the inhibition of cell division and cell elongation takes place, but also it also affects the shape, the structure of the plant cells as a result of allelochemical reactions against certain species. So, ang nangyari dito, example, we have this, ito na lang, sorgolion. So a potential herbicide inhibits photosynthetic machinery, electron transport in chloroplast and mitochondria, result in cell numbers in each cell division period, suppresses water and solute uptake. So another leaf extracts from the Turas centramonium. So in maize and sunflower, itong effect niya, negative effect on primary root elongation in maize, lateral root inhibition in maize, inhibition of germination in sunflower. Now, this time naman, ethyl acetate fraction of Aglaia odorata. So, allium cepa naman. So, it damaged the chromatin organization and mitotic spindle. So, this time naman, it talks about yung cell division, yung how the cell divides, and at the same time, yung kanyang elongation. But it does not only affect the number, but also affects the structure and the shape. So these are just some of the references that we can refer to, or references that we can read later on pagdating doon sa allelochemical and their targeted species and how they influence the cell division and elongation process. Now, bakit natin to pinag-uusapan? Because of the phytosociological relationships, which is very essential when we want to have a greener environment, when we have a better yield. So when we talk about phytosociological relationships, when we speak of phytosociology, we are talking about the structure, the composition of a certain ecosystem certain ecosystem and how these allelochemical dimensions affect this. So dito sa diagram natin sa screen, the allelochemical dimensions in terms of the structure and composition of the ecosystem, it affects the soil chemistry, microbial ecology, species richness, phytodiversity, nutrient dynamics, the ecosystem structure, the succession, the evolution of the ecosystems, and as well as the invasion. So we are talking about those invasive species that may be detrimental doon sa mga halaman. Now, these phytosociological relations, yung ating mga allelopathy, the dimensions that I mentioned a while ago, it affects the ecosystem, it accelerates ecosystem development processes, particularly those specific natural associations prevailing among native plant species. Now, the positive attribute ng pagkakaroon ng allelopathy, the incorporation of symbionts and amelioration of microbial ecology, just as exemplified by the interaction of the various soil microorganisms in the initial slides that I presented. They are vital in suppressing invasive species, playing ecocidal roles in natural ecosystems, and reestablishing all native species that have been integral components of natural ecosystems. So this is the positive side. Now, in agriculture systems, allelopathy can be vital use in creating symbiosis and synergy among a variety of croplands, cropping patterns and systems, and increasing crop productivity. So based on this discussion, based on these phytosociological relationships that we can see, allelopathy, it's not just purely negative. It's not just purely inhibits, but sometimes it ameliorates some processes. It ameliorates or improves some processes, thereby has positive effects in general doon sa isang ecosystem. So phytosociological, dealing with this kind of topics, phytosociological relationships, with the inclusion of allelopathic relationships in the ecosystems, we can foresee a better results or better yield, better environment that we can retrieve. Now, maganda when we are talking about this. The discussion is very much technical because we are talking about different chemicals or different allelochemicals. But in general, knowing and understanding this, it will result to a better yield doon sa isang area. Now, let's talk about the agricultural systems. So sa agricultural systems, it has several applications. So we can refer to cropping systems management and mulching for weed control. We can develop ecologically healthy agrochemicals and microbial pesticides. We can also cultivate or breed allelopathic cultivars, mga halaman na magaganda the positive effects, has positive allelopathic effects. And sometimes it can also reduce nitrate leaching and nitrous oxide pollution. So maganda yung epekto nito. Now, we'll be having an activity. So an activity, it will be a group activity. If you remember, last time, I told everyone that I'll be giving you an activity. So, but I realized later na it will be quite difficult if we'll not be talking about the discussion first. So, hinayaan ko na siyang naka-close for everyone. So, we'll have this kind of activity this time. So, anong gagawin natin? So, we'll be having two different activities. So, this one, itong allelopathic applications, I will group you into two. So based on your experience, I will ask you to make a short discussion on allelopathy applications in agriculture, and you may choose from the two following applications. Now, another activity, this will be submitted 2 weeks later. I'll ask you to write a 2-page narrative report of a specific example of allelopathic plant and its effect on the target species and discuss thoroughly its mechanism or how allelopathy occurs among the plants. So images may be used in the discussion. So each one of you will focus on a particular mechanism. So one will be talking about soil ecology, photosynthesis. I didn't include those yung last two because there are already a lot of examples provided. So we'll be focusing on this time. So I think that ends my presentation. So this is quite different from the discussions that we had previously. So this topic kasi it's more very technical. So as mentioned nga kanina, different chemicals. Yung kung narinig ninyo yung ating discussion, there are a lot of chemicals. But these chemicals has positive effect. So before we proceed with Sir Rafael, I'll ask in advance, parang advance na to, probably just a short answers. Kung how did you were you able to encounter such situation that deals with allelopathy? So who would like to start first? So apat na lang po tayo dito. Ay, five pala tayo dito. Who want to start first? Sir John Eric.
Sir, good morning po. Regarding po dun sa allelopathy, parang hindi pa kami naka-encounter ng ganun sa field or hindi lang namin siya pa nakikita and hindi lang kami aware. So one specific example na alam ko na may allelopathic ay yung mahogany.
Yeah, mahogany.
Mahogany has an allelopathic na properties. So kami, alam ko, way back 2018, I was looking into kunin yung yung i-isolate yung kanyang allelopathic properties just to develop or try to develop organic pesticide or herbicide for that matter. Yun pa lang kasi sir ang medyo ko sa allelopathy. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you Sir John Eric. So how about Ma'am Bell? Ma'am Bell?
Good morning po. Ang experience naman po namin dito sa Aurora is meron po kasing project. Ang agency po namin about the Boton tree, funded po siya ng BA-BAR. So yung Boton tree po na yon is kilala dito as toxic po sa ating mga fish. So ang ginawa po ng project team headed by Dr. Kabatan, so ginamit po nila to reduce po or to lessen po or to suppress yung ating invasive still sa rice, and nakita po nila doon na effective po yung paggamit po nila ng Boton tree. So nakapag-develop po sila ng iba't ibang klaseng biomolluscicide po doon sa ating Boton tree po na iyan. Kasi mataas po siya sa mga alkaloids, parang sa tannins. So yun po mga nabanggit niyo po, Doc. Yun po. Thank you po.
Okay, so there are a lot of projects also working on this pala on allelopathy. Actually, speaking of yung kanina sabi ni Sir John Eric yung mahogany, we initially also had a project. It's just only a project proposal forwarded to DOST Picard. I partnered with the Department of Forestry about this yung sa mahogany. Yung we want to know the real interaction. Ano yung mga interaction na nangyayari? Ano yung ano mga agrochemicals, allelochemicals na nare-release and how it affects a particular species. So however, and in general yung the genetic diversity yung kasi din namin makita that time. However, the project is very similar with the project that is we're not familiar with the project being conducted sa forestry department naman ng UP Los Baños. So the DOST Picard advised us to partner with them instead of having a separate funding. So yun yung nangyari doon sa project because we also want to deal with allelopathy at that time. Yes, Sir John Eric.
Sir, saan siya na? Naaalala ko lang, idagdag ko lang din siguro.
Mm.
The study po nung may na-fund kami yung project way back na matagal na rin naman. The Balakat, sir, yung ginamit yung Balakat.
Balakat tree.
It was from PSAU actually. So maganda rin po yung results ng mga studies na conducted ng ating mga researchers from PSAU, and it was ang problema lang is paano natin siya i-upscale. Ando na lang po tayo sa problem na yon. So yun po, just to share.
Okay. Thank you, Sir John Eric. So at least the Balakat tree, which is very native to Pampanga. So thank you, sir. Let's hear it from Sir Joel. Yes, Sir Joel.
Thank you po, Sir Gerald. I hope na I can get through kasi I'm somewhere in NLEX, baka yung signal ko mag-fluctuate. Anyway po, okay po ba sa ngayon so far yung audio ko?
Yes, sir. Okay po yung audio niyo, sir.
Okay, thank you po. In fact, sir, I'll be talking about not exactly what we encountered because we're not implementing, but what we have observed. And probably yung appreciation ko dito sa topic na shinare niya po, sir, is mostly, I think it is tremendous significance in terms of putting forward the best cultural management practices sa field. Kasi yung allelopathy, it gives you a sense of how we should really manage our production systems or yung ating farming systems in relationship ng mga itatanim. So, for example, kaya po importante yung weed management, for example. Kasi doon pa lang na-illustrate yung yung allelopathic. If I get the context correct po, sir, no? Yung competition ng weeds sa kanong primary crop mo. Kaya nga tayo nag-weeding kasi yung weeds, mas mabilis siyang dumami tumubo kaysa doon sa halaman. So ipapabayaan natin na hindi tayo magdadamo, yung competition intense, mauunahan niya yung halaman. So that's one basic application. Again, nutrient management. Kasi the faster uptake of these invasive species will overpower the crops. So again, yung yield ma-compromise. Second, it has something to do also with the adaptation of crops. For example, if there are also in the proper, combination of crops. For example, kung nag-multi-story system, importante yung multi-story kasi you will be properly allocating or distributing what crops to plant and what would be the pattern or design. For example, yung matataas, hindi pwedeng puro matataas, then yung mga sun-loving crops nasa ilalim ng canopy. So definitely walang sunlight na papasok. So that's another application. And also, I believe that certain physiological processes of crops would be triggered. Kung halimbawa, nasa isang sitwasyon yung halaman na nakatago siya or natatabunan siya ng iba, I think there are some hormonal, may mga hormonal dynamics na mag-trigger kaya yung halaman biglang tataas para mas matangkad siya doon sa katabi niya. Parang ganun, sir, parang nakikita ko na isang application dyan. And then also, ito, I'll just share. I don't know if you have watched a movie. May movie kasi ako napanood nun na fictional naman, posibleng mangyari pa yata, na yung mga halaman, mga puno, develop an antagonistic relationship with the human being. So yung mga tao, since yung mga tao parang destructive in nature, nag-develop ng mechanism yung halaman na nag-emit sila ng isang parang hormone which triggers human beings to lose their sense of self-preservation. So nangyayari, pag yung halaman, humangin, pag may tao, binubugahan niya yung mga tao para yung mga tao nagsusuicide, napapakamatay. Sabihin, parang sige, survival of the fittest na to. Kasi tayong mga tao daw ay destructive sa nature. So yung halaman, develop sila ng mechanism, defensive mechanism, to overpower us. And then suddenly people suddenly dies. And then the plants become the dominant species on Earth. So it's a fictional story, pero it's one way of probably illustrating how allelopathy works. So yun lang po, sir. Just to share po. Thank you po.
Thank you. Tama kayo, sir. The very basic example is actually the grass, yung weed. Pag nagwi-weed tayo, So, yun. So, there's a certain competition at I think yung movie, sir, na nabanggit ninyo, I think I watch it or yeah, I just viewed it
Ano
from
ko yung title,
Facebook
sir?
ata.
I forgot the title, sir. Eh.
Ako rin eh.
Sayang.
Iniisip ko nga din, sir.
Magandang movie siya.
Yeah. Then they release this kind of chemicals. I think, yeah, na pasadahan ko yan sa Facebook. Try ko mamayang tignan ulit. I'll rewatch the movie. So, ayun, thank you, Sir Joel. So, very clear examples. These are the clear examples, and it provides us opportunity to do research on such allelochemicals and how they can improve our crops, or how they can this be applied in agriculture in general. So, tatanungin ko ba si Sir Rafael or i-share na lang niya mamaya during the discussion? Sir Rafael? Or you have, ito.
Yes, sir. Sir, good morning.
Good morning. So, sir, I think there are also a lot of studies that you have in PSAU about this. I think baka yung sa Department of Crop Science are doing this, is doing this activity. So do you have any other experience with allelopathy, sir?
Sir, dito po sa Alias Center, yung nag-intercrop kami ng mangbean in the mulberry. Yung mangbean po help the main crop like mulberry to nitrogen fixation at saka po yung sa weeding po. They surpass the grass, kasabi ka po ni Sir Joel. Then, mas napapabilis po yung nutrients uptake ng mulberry. Kaya mas mabilis po siyang lumago. Yun lang po.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you, Sir Rafael. So this is just another example of allelopathic plants. So basically, parang hindi naman halos lahat mahirapan pag ginawa yung isang activity. So I'll prepare the listing. Then we'll hear from Sir Rafael. Ready ka na ba, Sir Rafael, for your presentation? Sir Rafael?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sige. I'll be the one who would share the screen, and you'll be sharing your report.
Yes, sir. Sana po
on
magkaroon ng justice.
Magkakaroon yan. I'm just pulling out the slides. Okay. Once I share the screen, Sir Rafael, you can start. Okay.
Yes, sir. Okay. Good morning, class. Good morning, sir. My report is all about allopathic effect of Artemisia algae on germination and growth of various weeds. This concept of ecological farming and organic product were proposed to reduce the use of chemical fertilizer and pesticide to develop new, safe, effective, and pollution-free substitute to meet the societal needs. Then allelopathy, from the Greek word allelo and pathi, it means mutual and harm or suffering. Allopathy means the one the plant produce chemical substance to affect the growth and development of other plants. The chemical produced by allopathy called allochemicals, a secondary metabolite produced by plants. Allelochemicals, it can stimulate or inhibit the germination and growth of plants, increase the resistance crop and biotic and abiotic stress. Allochemicals do not exert residual or toxic effect, can be considered as potential strategy for the drug development environmental friendly biological herbicide. Artemisia agri is a perennial herbaceous plant widely known in Asia. A-agri-rich secondary metabolites, including many chemicals constituent which are beneficially human health. Obviously, the discovery of material with extensive source, low cost, and markedly allopathic effect will have far ecological impacts to biological herbicide. A-agri leaf powder is remaining waste from Artemisia agri making muxa stick. Then plant materials from Ube chinchun, the residue of A-agri leaves come from 90% of the total weight is called A-agri leaf powder. Yung pong ginamit. Then the experimental seed were Brassica pekinensis, Lactusa sativa, Oryza sativa, Protocola olecera, Oxalis corniculata, and Ceteria brisidis. Then the chemical composition analysis of A-agri is ultra high performance liquid chromatography quadruple time of light mass spectrometer, where 0.5 A-agri leaves mixed with 20 ml ultra pure water and 50% ethanol and pure ethanol. Then seed germination, 20 seed from the above tested species, then treated with 8 ml of 3 extract prepared from A-agri at different concentration, 50, 100, and 150 ml per milligram per ml, and 3 replicates of each treatment group were established. Then for pilot experiment, A-agri powder was mixed into a sand, soil, and ratio of 100% the control, and 102, then 104, then 108. Then equal amount of water was added into each treatment group. Then 50 seed each sample were sown independently in both 3 biological repeats. Then field trial for a medicinal botanical garden from Hubei University of Chinese Medicine were selected as the experimental site. A-agri powder was eventually applied to the plant at the concentration of 0 to 0.1 and 0.2 kilogram meter squared. Then the chemical component analysis of different extract of A-agri, higher content of sactoptides and capiolic acid and 3-capiolic acid were observed in a water extract, 50% ethanol extract, but low concentration were detected. Then comparison of 50% ethanol extract showed striking allopathic inhibitor effect on the germination index of the Bikinensis and L. sativa, but moderate inhibitor effect of Bikinensis. Water-soluble extract of A inhibit the germination of growth. Result, the water-soluble extract of A-agri powder exhibit the strongest allopathic effect on the plant growth. The germination rate index, root length, stem length, and biomass were selected the allopathic response indices. A-agri, as the proportion of A-agri powder gradually enhanced, the level of inhibition of germination rate and the plant will the 6 tested plants was gradually increased. Then A-agri inhibit germination and growth of weeding chrysanthemum. A-agri powder for 1 month, 6 species weed appeared in the control group, while the raised species weed appeared into the group treated with 0.1 kilogram meter squared powder, and only 1 species weed appeared. A-agri inhibit the germination and growth of weed via suppression of chlorophyll synthesis and photosynthesis. In summary, the results suggest that the A-agri inhibit the germination and growth of weed via multi-pathways, especially inhibiting the photosynthesis and chlorophyll synthesis pathway. Results were inconsistent with the transcriptome analysis. 9 genes of photosynthesis were significantly suppressed by A-agri treatment in the concentration-dependent manner. Transcriptome data and verification showed that the suppression of chlorophyll synthesis and photosynthesis was one of the key mechanisms of A-agri inhibitors. And discussion, water-soluble metabolites with B allochemicals of A-agri. A-agri allopathy provides a valuable way of herbicides development. Transcriptome revealed in summary, the inhibition of A-agri allopathy, on which might be owing the suppression of synthesis of chlorophyll and photosynthesis pathway. A-agri allopathy provides valuable way of herbicides and development. It were to be developed a botanical herbicides and suggesting a replacement of some chemical herbicides. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, kakapagod.
Inom ka muna, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's actually a very interesting topic talking about this allelopathy of a agri, Artemisia agri. So this is a shrub to,
Shrub.
no? Shrub. So a shrub, and it was used to several species. No? So in particular, Chinek, yung seed germination, it's very nice. So the result may be used as a tool for development of a natural herbicide, so organic, an organic or natural herbicide instead of the synthetic ones. So thank you, Sir Rafael, for sharing your presentation. So meron po ba tayong tanong kay Sir Rafael? Wala na daw. Wala na ba? Wala na. Okay. I think it's very straightforward naman yung allelopathy. It can be it's just the way on how you will look into allelopathy. Kumbaga, paano mo siya i-interpret on what kind of perspective that you want to say it. Then you can develop products later on out of this. So tulad nga nung naging sharing ni Sir Rafael and also kanina Sir John Eric and with Sir Joel and Ma'am Bel, we can see that we can use this as natural herbicides in killing some of those invasive plant species in a particular environment or particular ecosystem. So thank you, Sir Rafael.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so the instructions doon sa activity, it's already in Genomio, so you can just view it later. I will not take much of the time for today so that you can use the time in reading. So again, the first activity, yung allelopathy applications, you will be grouped into two. So I'll just use, tama. So eco-engineering for farming systems. So actually, you may capture this pagdating doon sa topic na I want a group activity and yon yung nabanggit ni Sir John Eric may be also included as positive, or I mean the application of allelopathy in agriculture. So, thank you, Sir John Eric. So ganito po yung gawin natin. I'll group you into two. So para fair, we'll have a team maker, so randomizer. So you'll be grouped into two. So let's generate the teams. Okay. So for this, we have first team, we have Sir John Eric, Sir Rafael, Ma'am Bel, and Ma'am Trisha. For another group, we have Ma'am Tess, Ma'am Virgie, and Sir Joel. So I haven't seen Ma'am Virgie for a while. Ma'am Bel, are you connected to Ma'am Virgie?
Yes po, Doc. Minessage ko po siya last week po dahil hindi na rin po siya nakakapasok sa ibang subject po niya. Kaya ang sabi po niya, nagkasakit po siya. So,
Okay.
I thought po papasok po siya ngayong araw. So, yun po, wala na po akong balita after po nung yun. Pero chinat ko po siya kanina. Sabi ko po, pasok po tayo, ma'am. Ayun po, wala pa rin pong response.
Okay. Sige po. Anyway, we'll proceed with the grouping. So random naman yung ating pag-group. So I'll just chat ko din siya dito. Okay, so I'll share that yung grouping so that we can be maalala natin siya. Then ang gagawin po natin is you'll be picking 2 topics from what I have presented. I'll share it again. Okay. So I'll start the 2 topics. 4 topics. So tig-dalawa po niyan. Pipili po tayo ng tig-dalawa. So you can discuss this among yourselves. So paunahan na lang po nung mga topics. I-chat na lang po dito sa Messenger. So sa group chat po natin. So it may be 2 of the following. From the following applications. So cropping systems management and mulching for weed control, ecologically healthy agrochemicals and microbial pesticides, breeding the allelopathic cultivars, reduce nitrate leaching and nitrous oxide pollution. So pwede po tayong pumili. You have to choose 2 from these 4 applications. So unahan na lang po kung ano na-dictate kung sino, but unahan na lang po. So you can discuss this quickly among the group, among yourselves, then just message po yung sa group chat natin. Then for the next activity, I'll just use the randomizer. I'll share it I'll organize ito. Kaya na ba? Kaya naman siya. Diba? This will be submitted week after next. So next Saturday. Okay, so I'll use a randomizer. Gamitin ko ulit yung randomizer. Para dun sa topics naman, dun sa isang activity. Set up ko lang siya. Okay, so pakita ko po yung sa ano naman, yung sa second activity, yung allelopathic plant. Okay, so for this activity, one will just write a narrative report on a particular allelopathic plant that has an effect on the following. So para po iba-iba yung mga topics natin. So we'll randomize it. Okay. So we have here, so si Ma'am Bell on the effect on respiration, Sir Rafael on enzyme functions, Sir John Eric on photosynthesis, Ma'am Tricia on soil ecology, Ma'am Virgie on antioxidant system, then Ma'am Tess on the protein and nucleic acid systems, and Sir Joel on the influence on plant growth regulator system. So chat natin siya dito.
Sir Gerald,
Yes, sir.
clarification po. Yung po mga specific instructions activity, mapopost naman po sa Genome yun po, for reference
Yeah.
po.
Yes, sir. Opo. Nasa ano siya?
Sige po.
Opo.
Okay sir, thank you po.
So I'll also post yung pong groupings doon sa Genome. Okay, so I think if we are good already on for today, so we talked about yung pong allelopathy, also Sir Rafael, and each and everyone already shared their experience about this, and nagkaroon na tayo ng oral report from Sir Rafael on a particular study talking about allochemical relations. Okay, so may I request everyone to turn on their cameras for our documentation today. Para din buti si Sir Joel hindi siya yung nagda-drive ngayon. Okay? So in count of 3, 1, 2, 3. So again, isa pa po. In count of 3, 1, 2, 3. So ayun po. Thank you for your participation in our class today. So ingat po tayong lahat and have a great lunch. Good day everyone. Good day po.
Thank you po,
Good day, sir.
Doc.
Thank you po, Doc.
Good day.